Namaste everyone. So I hope you're all having a wonderful day. And today I'm bringing another story from Shiva Purana. And this is not from the creation section today, just for a change. If you have heard my previous sessions, I have been talking about stories of creation. But today let's just backtrack a little. Shiva Purana starts with this section called Shiva Purana Mahatmyam, meaning the glory of Shiva Purana. See, our ancestors were so highly intelligent. They did not start writing this huge scripture with any great philosophy or, of course, the philosophy, the Dharma Marga, everything follows by and by. But what they started with was, why should you read this holy scripture, right? So, and they don't even do that with lectures or jargons, but they start telling you why you should listen to this holy scripture with stories. That's always a very, very interesting way of capturing the audience, and our ancestors did it so effortlessly. So the Shiva Purana, the first part of it, the Shiva Purana Mahatmyam, starts with several stories that talk about how various people benefited from reading this scripture. And most of these stories have the same underlying theme, that is, some people attained better lives, some even those who were not on the right path during their lives, obtained moksha, or they got to live with the gods themselves once they passed away, and so on and so forth. Somewhere, you may not be that person 100%, but you will start identifying with those people. And then by and by, you start reading this Shiva Purana, you feel convinced that you are also going to benefit by reading this scripture, both spiritually, philosophically, mentally. You feel a bit stronger when you read not just Shiva Purana but any scripture. So anyway, Shiva Purana begins with one of the stories that it begins with is about this couple called Chanchula and Binduga. Surprisingly, none of these names are very common, and these names are not even in the common practice anymore. That's why it's a little hard to remember these names. So anyway, names are not important, the characters are, and their stories are, more importantly, are what we need to focus on. So Binduga and Chanchula were a married couple, and they had 3 children, but by and by, Binduga started ignoring his family. He started providing for his family financially or emotionally. He was not there for them at all. He was just gambling with his friends. He was just touring with his friends, and he was immersed in a world of his own. And Chanchula had enough of this. So one day she confronted her husband. She said, "What are you doing? You're a father. You're a husband. You have duties to perform. Why are you indulging in these nasty ways where you are not even there for us anymore? And how am I to bring up 3 children?" Binduga just shushed her, as he always did. He said, "Listen, don't nag me. Do not bother me. If you want, you also go ahead and have a good life. Why don't you also start, having a good time with your life? Why do you want to be, behind me and harassing me for ways that I am not interested in?" Okay, Chanchula should not have been influenced by this, but sometimes people do get influenced by, others' words, and she started thinking, could my husband be right? Am I leading a very boring life? Is that why I'm nagging him? Why don't I also start, having a little bit of fun with my life? Bad idea, because she took up gambling. She joined a group of people who were gamblers. The thing with bad habits is it's very easy to get used to them. If you have to develop a good habit, as you very well know, even if you have to get up 15 minutes earlier every day, it takes so much effort, right? You have to practice it for 21 days, as they say, and you have to be so conscious of it, and you keep digressing. But when it comes to vices or the bad habits, it's so easy to just pick them up. And that's what happened with Chanchula. once she started gambling, she wanted to gamble more. And she did exactly what her husband was doing. That is, carelessly indulging in ways, forgetting her duties as a mother. And first of all, the kids did not have their father around, and now they did not even have their mother around. And Chanchula's neighbors, her well-meaning relatives, they all tried to reason with her. They said, you cannot be doing what your husband is doing, just look around you. There are so many women who are single-handedly bringing up their children. We will help you out. Why don't you just come back to your previous ways, that is your previous motherly ways. And but Chanchula had none of it. She just shushed them all, saying, all of you just mind your business. If you want, you help my children. Don't come and bother me with my ways. So fortunately, the children had the support of the family and the community, and they grew up. And Chanchula just went on with her ways, and there was no sign of Binduga. And by and by, Chanchula grew old, and there was no sign of her husband, and her children had also moved away from the town, because they all had grown up with the help of others, and they were not in the town. They had probably moved on to different towns looking for employment, settling down. And when Chanchula grew so old that she was too weak to even gamble or indulge in vices, she did not know what to do. Even fending 2 meals for herself started becoming a problem. So one day when she sat worriedly on the roadside, she saw a group of pilgrims who were, who had food with them, and who were doing bhajans, and who were devotees of Lord Shiva. And Chanchula went and asked them, "Where are you all going?" So they all said, "We are going to this holy town of Gokarna." And Chanchula just eyed the food they had. She thought, if I somehow join this group, I can have 2 meals per day. That was a very, very selfish motive to join a group of pilgrims, but she did that nonetheless. So the pilgrims were very nice. They said, "Definitely join us, come with us." And she traveled with them. And when they reached Gokarna, after resting up a little, they all headed to the temple. As many of you may know, Gokarna is a holy town in Karnataka, where there is a temple for Lord Shiva, which is very ancient and also very, very holy. And Chanchula went with these group of pilgrims to the temple. And when she went to the temple, there was a discourse happening. And that discourse was of Shiva Purana. The Purohit of the temple was reciting Shiva Purana to the attendees. Chanchula did not know what else to do, so she just sat there and started listening. And to her shock, that day's recital was all about various sins committed by people and the kinds of punishments that one gets for those various sins. And by the end of that 1 hour discourse, Chanchula was so frightened. So at the end of the discourse, she fell at the feet of the Purohit and said, "Holy man, I have committed all the sins, most of the sins at least that you just described. I am old, I am going to die soon. I don't want to go to hell and suffer in hell. Please help me out of this misery. What do I do?" The Purohit smiled at her. He said, "Don't worry, just lead the rest of your life in the right way. Come to the discourse every morning and evening. It's going to be for an hour or 2 twice a day, and help around the temple. And you know what? Don't worry about the punishments that you are going to face in hell. Just lead a good life for now." Chanchula agreed. So she started attending the Puranic sessions that were happening in the morning and in the evening, and she also started helping out in the temple kitchen and cleaning the temple and helping those who needed help, like the elderly and the handicapped. So she made herself very useful. So by and by, what happened was she began to enjoy the sessions of Shiva Purana that was happening in the temple. Initially, she went there only because the Purohit had told her. She went there out of fear that she did not want to suffer in hell. But as she listened to the discourse day after day after day, she had a change of heart. She had a change of mind. She wanted to be genuinely selfless, genuinely good. She was no longer afraid of the hell that she was going to face, but she wanted to be a useful person as long as she lived. And that's what she did. She became a pious woman. She became a useful, selfless person, and she was even loved by people, which she had never experienced before. And she enjoyed the rest of her life, leading the life of Dharma. And then she passed away, with old age. And when she passed away, goddess Parvati, who is Shiva's wife, Shiva's consort, she sent her assistants to fetch Chanchula to Kailasa. And when Chanchula reached Kailasa with Parvati's attendants, she was on the one hand shocked and on the other hand overwhelmed with joy looking at Parvati. She had heard so many stories of Shiva and Parvati in the temple all through the discourse. She could not believe her eyes that she was actually facing the goddess. And then she asked the goddess, "Am I dreaming or is it real? I am not worthy of your presence." Then Parvati just smiled at her and said, "Who says you are not worthy? You have listened to the discourse of Shiva Purana and you are a devotee of Lord Shiva now, and you led a very pious life towards the end. So please, don't think that you are unworthy of being here." So Chanchula began to live in Kailasa as Parvati's attendant. And many years passed, and in the gods' years, many hundreds and thousands of years passed, and one day Parvati asked Chanchula, "You have been such an ardent helper of mine, a devotee of mine. I would like to bestow a boon on you. What would you like?" And Chanchula, there had been something that was bothering her for a long time. She asked the goddess, "I know my husband was irresponsible. I know my husband's ways were bad, but still he was my husband. So I would like to know what happened to him. What is he doing now? And is there any possibility of reuniting with my husband?" Then Parvati divined, and she showed Chanchula what had happened to her brother, and Chanchula was shocked. Her husband, after his mortal life, had attained the life of a Pishachi. A Pishachi is a devil, which is considered to be the lowliest of lives to attain. And Chanchula was shocked to see the plight of her husband as a devil going from here to there and troubling people and being cursed by people and being thrown around with the curses of sages and saints. And she was in tears. She asked Goddess Parvati, "Can you please kindly help my husband also attain salvation? Can he join me here? Is that possible?" And then Goddess Parvati said, "Not in the current state that he is in. He still doesn't have a pure heart or a pure mind. But let's give him a chance. Let's see what can be done." So now Goddess Parvati, she summoned Tumburu. Tumburu is a Gandharva. Gandharvas are the celestial singers. And Tumburu is a chief singer in Indra's heaven, that is Indra's Amaravati. And Goddess Parvati summoned Tumburu and asked him to take Chanchula and recite the entire Shiva Purana to Binduga. Tumburu agreed, and then he told Chanchula as they started to find Binduga, "Listen, him being a Pishachi or a devil, he is not going to sit in one place and listen to the recital. The very nature of a devil is not to listen to anything holy. So we have to find a way to make him listen. So however difficult it is for you, you have to help me tie him to a tree. That's the only way to make him stay in one place." So now Chanchula and Tumburu found Binduga, Binduga in the form of a Pishachi and tied him with great difficulty. You know, it's not easy to tie a Pishachi down, and tied him with great difficulty to a tree, and Tumburu started singing. He's a celestial singer after all, a very beautiful singer, and he recited over a period of years the entire Shiva Purana to Binduga. Initially, you know, the Pishachi was looking here and there, not paying attention, trying to make noises. But even a Pishachi, even a devil got attracted to this beautiful rendition of Shiva Purana from the mouth of Tumburu. So by the end of it, Binduga had gone through a transformation. He was so repentant of his ways and he wanted to be good, he wanted to do good, and now Parvati, with her benevolence, got both Binduga and Chanchula to Kailasa. So that way, both the husband and wife stayed in Kailasa, serving Shiva and Parvati eternally. So that brings us to the end of the story, and if you just look at it, you know, it is a very creatively written story, right? I mean, there are so many aspects to it. You know, Binduga being bad in his ways, and finally Binduga's transformation, Chanchula's transformation, and the goddess's forgiveness. So yes, this is a very effective way that our ancestors have tried to convince us the holiness or the greatness of listening to Shiva Purana. Now, if we pay closer attention to this story and analyze this, why is the scripture telling us that we have to listen to it in its entirety? You know, Shiva Purana is about 1 lakh verses or even more. Who knows, you know, how much has been preserved now. So over 1 lakh verses, if somebody shows us the right way to live, the wrong things to do, the great deeds of sages, and how this world was created, how this world is going to be destroyed, and what kind of a part we can play in this world when we are alive, we are definitely going to be influenced, right? About the right way and the wrong way. That is the power of any scripture, not just Shiva Purana. You know, you can take any holy scripture, or even the books by great men like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Vivekananda. There is the Gospel of Ramakrishna, and then there are these volumes on of speeches by Swami Vivekananda, or any holy saint and achievers. You are going to be influenced in the right manner. So that is why it is important to invest at least some minutes in a day, maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, to read something that is motivational. You know, what motivates me may not be motivational to you, but especially, you know, when you delve into the Hindu scriptures, they are so in plenty. So find what appeals to you, read every day, even a little bit at a time, and read it in its entirety. So it will change you in ways you don't even know, you don't even understand. So you will relate to the stories, you will relate to the characters, and also this is the best way to be in the company of great men, don't you think? Because scriptures are written by sages. They are written by sages who have had years of penance, years of taposhakti, and they are telling us about their enlightenment and what and about their enlightened ways rather. So I think it's very important that we all invest at least some part of the day in reading these scriptures, any scripture that appeals to you, and I hope you will consider what the Shiva Purana is saying. And with that, I'm going to finish today's session, and